So it's still exciting to have a little bit of time with you today, and just for me and for the rest of the church to get to know you a little bit better. We have seen your face for many years, as you know, the organisation of Riverside, as well as seeing your name more recently on all emails and with everything that's going on. But it's super exciting that we've announced to the church that you're joining the eldership and the leadership, and we're really, really excited about that. So this is a great chance for the congregation to get to know you a little bit better. So yeah, I think it should be fun.
Cool.
So as I said to you just before, we like to start everything like this, turning everything back to God, making sure he's at the centre of all we did. So one of the questions I asked you was, whether there was any kind of passage or thought about God that has resonated with you this week, as we kind of start with a bit of an act of worship.
Yes, there is. I'll read it to you. It's from John 14 and it's verse 27. I'm not going to read the NIV version. I'm going to read the NLT because I like to hear things in a fresh way. It says, I'm leaving you with a gift, peace of mind and heart. And the peace I give is a gift the world cannot give. So don't be troubled or afraid. And somebody sent me that via email the other week, actually. It wasn't a kind of a random, devotion that drops in your box. Somebody took the time to send me that a couple of weeks ago, and her timing was amazing.
Yeah.
And then I led collective worship this week for the local school, and unrelated, I went for that Bible verse because we were talking about peace and being still in a storm, and obviously we're all living through one big storm. So that's what's sitting with me at the minute.
That is a fantastic verse to be dwelling on for us all at the moment. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. So I thought we could move on from that, and it would be good if you could tell us a little bit about, I suppose, just give us an overview about you, what you do, and your family.
Okay, so I work for Riverside Church, and I have done since February 2011. So coming up for 10 years.
Wow.
I can't believe that, to be honest. So I work in the office doing bits of admin, but I also have the privilege of meeting people who are in the community and trying to get a relationship with them. So that can involve going into a local school, leading collective worship. It involves helping out with the English classes that we run at church. So it's quite a broad spectrum of things, making sure that risk assessments are done. I've written so many recently, it's unbelievable. Yeah. And I'm sure other people are in that boat as well. Yeah. So it's quite a varied role, which I love.
Yeah, and it's it is a varied role, just listing what you've done there, but it's a role that's progressed, hasn't it, over that 10 years from I think you kind of started more as just on the admin support side of things for Daryl as we grew in the church, but and now it's really, you're at the forefront of the community work that we're doing and the outreach work that we're doing and things like that, which is really exciting.
Really exciting, particularly when you if I'm honest with you, when you consider that I actually didn't want the job to stop and I'm here 9.5 years later. So somebody had a different idea to me.
Exactly. Amazing. Oh, well, there you go. It's just a really good example of where we step out in faith, in obedience rather than necessarily what we want and like that. And what about family, Ruth?
So I've got a 13-year-old son called Matthew, who is somewhere lurking, and we live together, obviously, and Matthew's dad doesn't live with us. Our marriage broke down, sadly, quite a number of years ago, but God's good and he's restored the relationship there. We work really well co-parenting in separate households, so that's a real answer to prayer. Actually, so yeah, that's good. And then my parents live quite close by as well, so they're a real support and integral part of raising Matthew with me as well.
Yeah, fantastic. That's amazing, and they're great people, aren't they? We love them so much. So that's cool. So I suppose like one of the big questions for us is like just to hand over to you and ask you to give us a bit of a testimony, really, about how like your story of how you came to faith, if that would be okay.
Yeah, that's fine. So I was brought up in a Christian family, which was a real blessing, really good start. And apparently, at the age of 5, I made my first commitment. Sat on the bunk bed in my bedroom,
Oh,
asking
wow.
Jesus to be my best friend.
Amazing.
And I've reconfirmed kind of my relationship at various stages throughout my life. When I was a teenager, again, I remember praying in the youth leader's back garden to be filled with the Holy Spirit, and I can still remember that to this day. And yeah, so I've been connected with church all the way along and with God all the way along. Doesn't mean it's always been easy, but He has strengthened me. So in the tough times, when my marriage broke down, that was really tough. But God spoke to me on a daily basis throughout that time, through the Psalms mostly.
Okay.
And Riverside was my family at that time, because my parents were living quite a distance away, and Riverside were a practical and an emotional support as well. So yeah, I couldn't have got through it, really, honestly, without my faith and without my church family at that time. And then sometime later, I had a tough time at work, my job, when I'd returned part-time after maternity leave. And again, Riverside were there and God was there. His hand was over me, caring for me. And He had this role lined up for me at Riverside. I just didn't know it at the time. And so, there's been highs and lows, and Jesus has always been with me. And that the faith in that is what's kept me going at times. There's been times when I could have given up on everything. I remember some really dark times, but He saw me through them, and He sent the right people to be with me during those times.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good to hear. And before I ask you another kind of serious question, do you have a middle name, Ruth? That's
Yes, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. Royal. That's solid.
We'll go with that.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Okay. And what do you like to do? What's your great loves in life?
I really, really like to read chick lit. That is my escapism. I'd rather do that than watch a film. I can devour a book in a day or so. So yeah, that's kind of my guilty pleasure, really.
Fantastic. What is your pet peeve?
I hate it when people don't use their indicators when they're driving. It drives me mad. Really, really does. Or if they do use it and then leave it on. Thinking, are you going to come out into this lane, or have you just forgotten that you've got your indicator going? And how can you forget? Because it's tick, 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 tick. Yeah. So yeah.
So moving back to Matthew, this is the key question, really, where we really like get to know you properly. But if we were to ask Matthew, what is your worst habit? What do you think he would like say? He may want to give a top 3. I don't know. But
He'd probably struggle to like narrow it down to even 3. But I think he'd probably say that I am quite a nag. I do nag him because I like things to be done, and I like them to be done quickly. And so, yeah.
So on the topic of good things, like this might be a little bit of a uncomfortable question, but like I wondered what strengths you thought you brought to the eldership and to the leadership of Riverside. So you have to blow your own trumpet, which isn't a naturally kind of
I feel like I'm being grilled for a job interview. Are you going to say, give me some examples?
Yeah. That's
no.
It. Where have you applied this kind of?
Gosh. I think I'm reliable. So if I say I'm going to do something, I'll do it. And if I don't, there'll be a really good reason as to why not. I think I'm fairly organised. I'm not afraid to speak up.
Well, we know that's true, but yeah.
Yeah, especially if I disagree with you. Poor Daryl.
So what excites you about the future?
I've said for quite some months now that I believe that this awful situation with COVID has actually given us an opportunity to just reassess everything that we do, both as individuals and as a church. And that excites me because everybody is having to think in a different way, no matter what job you do or what, anything that you're involved in. You've got to think about doing it in a different way. And that's really exciting. And I think the opportunity to question, well, why do we do this? Do we need to do it in this way, or can we do it in another way? I think that's really, really exciting for us all moving forward, for the church in particular. I think it's really healthy to just take a step back, and we've had to, and think, oh, what about, can't we do this way? And some of the ideas that people have been brilliant, and perhaps wouldn't have come to the surface had we not been in this pretty dire situation. So good's coming out of it. There's a lot of bad, but it's exciting to use the opportunity to turn it around and see what God's got for us, really.
Yeah. Are there any examples, because you said that there's some things that people have kind of suggested, is there any examples that spring to mind of ways we're trying to do things a little bit differently?
Something like this has come out of Fiona's suggestion from church.
Yeah.
She's the one who said, when we've asked, what ideas have you got? She said, well, I want to hear elders' testimonies. And we all thought, how simple, but great and obvious. And we didn't think of that. And because of the COVID situation, we asked people for ideas, and people like Fiona have given them, and it's brilliant.
Yeah, it was such a good idea when it came through. It was just like, this makes so much sense, and is such a lovely way of getting to know people and staying connected as a little bit more as well. And it was just so well done, Fiona, for that idea. It's fantastic. And actually, Fiona's had a couple of ideas that are really good that she's emailed through that we'll be looking to implement as we kind of try and vary this virtual, not just stick to the Sunday mornings, but once we've sorted this, it'll probably drop in the week. It's a little bit longer, but it's the kind of thing that people, I think, will hopefully really enjoy, to kind of listen, to hear about you and learn about you and the kind of things that you're excited about and what's happening at the moment, and what's happening. So the first of many, and we can expand it outside of the leadership and see where it takes us and stuff like that. Okay, I've got some quick fire questions for you though, Ruth.
Okay.
All right. Not too many. I know the answer. You've already given me the answer to one of them.
All right.
Yeah, that's obesity. So they're generally like a one-word answer. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Coffee. Okay. Lie in or up early?
Oh, depends on the day.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? I like to think I'm an up early, but I don't know. It's never consistently up early, and when the opportunity for a lie-in comes, it's like,
grab it with both hands.
yeah, definitely. This is the one I know the answer to. Book or Netflix?
Book.
Yeah, definitely. Starter or dessert?
Dessert.
Really?
Okay,
that's good. I mean, the third option should have been both, which
yes.
Favorite season of the year?
Spring.
Nice. Okay, one full of hope. That's good. Croissant or pain au chocolat?
Ooh. Both.
Both, yeah, definitely. Favourite ice cream flavour?
I don't do ice cream.
But you just said dessert over starter.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Ice cream doesn't count as a dessert.
It's just a palate cleanser. That's it.
Yeah.
Should go in between each one. Sorbet and ice cream. Okay, then. Better question. What's your perfect dessert? Pudding.
Chocolate.
Just chocolate.
Just pure chocolate. You can't beat Cadbury's Dairy Milk. Just yum.
That's just a big slab after a meal. That sounds great.
Yeah.
To be fair. And last one. What are you grateful for?
I'm grateful that I have a son who's healthy. I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for a God who sent his only son for me. And I'm grateful for my friends.
Brilliant. That's epic. I had a couple more questions for you if you haven't got to rush off or anything, Ruth, because I thought that just a few more questions. Like they were those questions that we had before about kind of getting to know you a little bit about your testimony and about the kind of like things that like make you tick and how you work and things like that. But I wondered, like, there was a couple of specific questions that I had more about like how you practically approach things, which I thought might be quite interesting for people to hear different ways of doing stuff. So the first question was like, how do you prepare and approach a sermon if you're asked to speak on a topic? How do you approach it? But it could be that you kind of, I suppose the question is either how do you prepare a sermon, or maybe how do you approach a Bible verse that you're looking at and looking to go into more detail. If you've got some thoughts on how you do it and some tips, I think that would be really helpful for us.
Okay, yep. So one thing that I found really helpful is having access to all of the different translations of the Bible online. So particularly when I'm looking at maybe one or two verses, I really like to look at those same verses across all of the different translations, because I can sometimes a particular word resonates with me from a particular translation. Like with that well-known passage from John that I just read from the NLT rather than from the NIV. So that's something that I do particularly for, and also well-known passages. I like to look around and think, I think God can use the different words to really speak to me. If I'm preparing a sermon, I tend to approach it like I used to approach an essay. So I will read around as much as possible. I've got a special A4 notebook where I take all of my notes that I'm making in preparation for a sermon. And then I do an idea storm and pray about it, obviously, read what the Bible has to say about it, and then let it settle for a while, and then come back to it and start jotting things down. And keep reading it through until I've kind of got something that I'm hoping is a message for God. And I'll usually get somebody else to have a look at it.
Okay, yeah.
And give me feedback. And it's my dad. And so he'll be honest with me and help me hone it. So
yeah. And because your dad's had obviously lots of experience of speaking and in churches and all different kinds of churches, and we were blessed to have him come to Quinter a few years ago, and he shared, and he was fantastic. So that's a really good, useful tip. So what's interesting about that, and it harks back to your strengths of organisation, is that kind of your model of developing that sermon is. There's a long build up to that to the actual delivery, so so you have to start quite early to be able to have it in a position to have someone to be able to cast an eye over it and things like that. So how far ahead do you kind of start?
Months ahead if I can, because if it gets too close to I know some people thrive on doing it like the night before, but I wouldn't be able to. My stress levels would be too high to think clearly.
Yeah.
So I can't do it that way.
I suppose leading on from that one, not thinking in terms of preparing for a sermon, but just in your whatever you call it, quiet time with God, or just I suppose you're busy, you're busy at home, you know you've got a busy job as well, the responsibilities, you know, friends and family and everything that's going on, which is amazing. Like, how do you kind of carve out time and find ways to put God at the center and at the heart of all you're doing?
It's a good question, because I need to get better at it. And one of the things that we do as a team is every week we meet together for an hour and a half. And part of that is just to discuss kind of practical things, right? What's coming up in the diary? What are you doing? Passing on information. But the other part is to have a time of devotion. So that's something that we've really deliberately, intentionally done, because we're working for a church, we're working for God. We need to make that a priority. So I found that really helpful. And in our devotions recently, we were asked that question: how do you carve time out? And so making a deliberate plan for at least once a year to go and do something on my own, maybe where there's no expectation to be, but other than to be fed. So it could be a half-day retreat somewhere. It could be an online. These days, it'd probably be an online kind of retreat.
Yeah.
But where I'm there to receive, not to give. The other thing I do is somebody called them arrow prayers once. So rather than think, well, I'll save that for my prayer time, I've found that doesn't work for me. So somebody says, can you pray for X, Y, Z? I'll do it. Or if I think this is happening, I really need to pray about it, then I do it now. I don't necessarily save it up because of just life going like that. I find it better to deal with things as they come along.
Okay, last question then for you, and then I'll let you go. But it's a kind of like COVID lockdown. You know, we're in a position where we've had a bit of release from some of the measures, but they're being enforced now, understandably. And have you got any top tips on how to cope with like going forward?
Good question. For me, maintaining routine is helpful. So when it is for Matthew as well. So when the schools were closed and things, then we had a routine that we both stuck to, and that was a routine for doing schoolwork Monday to Friday, but it was a routine of not doing schoolwork Saturday and Sunday. So kind of having routine and boundaries. I think time outside, it's really simple, but you feel so much better when you've been out in the fresh air and you've seen God's creation. Going for walks when we were in the really strict lockdown measure, you know, you want a bit of exercise every day.
Yeah,
was a real blessing to me, and it reminded me of the amazing creation that we're part of.
Yeah. So routine, get outside. Anything else?
Look for the positives. And be the positive for somebody else as well. So, you know, give somebody else a phone call or send them a card to make their day, rather than wait for somebody to do it to you.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. And eat lots of massive chunks of chocolate.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Amazing. Ruth, that's been like so good to have some time with you. I hope it hasn't been too much of a grilling. It felt like too much of an interview, but I think I feel like I know you more than I did before, and I hope like that the church feel that as they watch this, and also that we've glorified God in our conversation, because it's felt like he's at the heart of so much that we're doing, and in the way you talk and the way you live your life, it's God's central to it, and it's wonderful and a great example to all of us. So I'm really grateful for your time, and I'll let you crack on with tea.
Thank you. Matthew will be very happy.
Ruth, okay, thank you, Ruth.
Thank
See
you.
later.
See ya.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.